Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about draft strategies for the team defensive position in our 2019 fantasy football drafts. Now, before we begin today's video, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community, because for the entirety of the 2019 fantasy football season, I will be coming out with content, whether it's waiver wire Mondays, RB rankings on Tuesdays, wide receiver Wednesdays, going to the quarterbacks, to the tight ends, to hidden gems on Saturdays, live streams throughout every week. Join the community, help us get to that 7,000 subscriber mark. Much appreciation to all of you who have already joined, and don't forget to click that notification bell button. Also, a couple more announcements. The Patreon channel. If you want all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered, the link for my Patreon is down in the description. You can find more information there, because to be honest, that is the place to go if you want all of your questions answered on a weekly basis. Now, hey everybody, we're talking about defenses. Now, just want to preface really quickly. We're not talking about individual defensive players. Now, I know some of you have the IDP position in your fantasy leagues. This is not pertaining that. We are talking about team defenses that are in regular standard leagues. Now, I know many of you may be playing in a league that has abolished the defensive position, but I know many of you, even I, play in a league where the defense and kickers are still in the league, and they contribute heavily to your success or failures, perhaps, in fantasy football. So I thought I'd take some time out of the day to talk about defenses and how we can go about predicting one of the most unpredictable metrics in fantasy football, which is team defenses. Now, what I'm about to explain for the next couple minutes, it's pretty difficult, so I'm going to try my very best to explain it. I should have made some graphics. I made some mistakes, okay? Thinking about it right now, I probably should have made some graphics, but I got lazy today. It's Friday. All is well. We're going to get through this perfectly, okay? So get ready. Okay, so I wanted to find some correlations for team defenses as a whole in order to kind of give you guys a better idea of who can consistently be relied upon in terms of team defenses going into 2019. You don't want to have to replace your defense after the first 4 weeks of the season because they're completely garbage and just getting destroyed and torched, and they're giving you negative points, or they're not even contributing to your team and and eventually making you lose by that slight margin. Obviously, team defenses don't really determine whether you win or lose. Hopefully, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end position will lock that down because you have such a solid lineup, but this also plays a part. Now, in the last two seasons, in 2018 and 2017, just 5 teams were in the top 12 in fantasy points scored for team defenses in the last 2 seasons. Those be the Bears, the Rams, the Patriots, the Ravens, and the Seahawks. Those 5 teams generally are really good defenses in the National Football League as of late. So it's no surprise that they have been in the top 12 in terms of fantasy points scored in the last 2 years. Now, that being said, when it comes to fantasy football defenses, it's a lot different than regular defenses, because fantasy football defense, you're looking for defenses that are going to cause turnovers, that are going to score touchdowns, and then at the end of the day, be able to stop opposing offenses from scoring, because points per game scored also contributes to whether or not you get a certain amount of points. The way it works generally in fantasy football, for those of you who are new, defenses typically start with 10 points. If opposing offenses score points, they will progressively lose that 10-point margin. But obviously, if you get sacks, interceptions, fumbles, safeties, touchdowns, the total will rise. Okay? So just to give you a little bit of a basis. Now, after I looked at those top 5 teams that basically were pretty consistent over the last 2 years, I kind of wanted to look and find more correlations. Now, I looked at points per game first. Now, in 2017, the top 12 fantasy football defenses be the Jaguars, Ravens, Rams, Eagles, Chargers, Lions, Saints, Seahawks, Steelers, Bears, Panthers, Patriots. Those are the top 12 teams in 2017 in terms of fantasy points scored for team defenses. 10 of those teams were in the top 12 in terms of giving up less than 23 points per game in the NFL. So 10 teams in the top 12 of the best defenses in fantasy football gave up the least amount of points in the NFL. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'm going to explain it again with 2018. So of the 2018 teams, going from the Bears, Rams, Texans, Patriots, Broncos, Chiefs, Ravens, Vikings, Seahawks, Colts, Dolphins, Redskins, 7 of those 12 teams gave up 24 or less points in the NFL. Now, why is that valuable? Because the less points that you give up as a defense, the more points you will get on a weekly basis, or be rewarded with more points on a weekly basis from your team defense in fantasy football. So obviously there's a correlation between top defenses and giving up points to opposing offenses. Now, who's been consistent this last season? The Bears, the Ravens, the Texans, the Patriots, the Vikings, the Colts, and the Seahawks all gave less than 24 points to opposing offenses per game throughout the season, which again stays consistent with the Bears, the Ravens, the Patriots, and the Seahawks. Now, the Rams, where are the Rams on this list? The Rams gave up a lot more points than everybody expected, but that's not a surprise. They like doing shootouts, so they weren't in that. But the Rams got saved from turnovers and touchdowns. We'll go over that in a little bit. But just to kind of give you guys a little bit of perspective, points per game is not the only thing that we're looking for. Sure, objectively, if a defense is giving up not too many points, like let's see, the Titans, for example, gave up the third fewest points to opposing defenses last year, but they were nowhere near the top 12 scoring fantasy football defenses in 2018. Sure, they were great as a defense in terms of points given up, but if you're not getting those turnovers and touchdowns, it's not going to make a difference. I mean, let's talk about like the Cowboys last season in terms of points given up. They were the 6th best. They gave up the 6th fewest points to opposing offenses in the NFL last year per game, but they only scored 98 fantasy points in fantasy football as a team defense when the Bears scored 187. They almost doubled them up in terms of scoring points. So hopefully that makes sense. Moving on. Let's talk about turnovers and what kind of correlations I found there. So going into, doing my little research and stuff, 8 of the 12 teams that led the league last season in turnovers and causing turnovers, whether that's interceptions and fumbles recovered, 8 of those 12 teams were in the top 12 of fantasy defenses, being the Bears, the Rams, the Texans, the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Colts, the Seahawks, and the Redskins. All of them, the teams that that forced the most turnovers, were typically a part of the top defenses in fantasy football. So how do we predict the defense is going to, force turnovers? We don't know. But objectively, if your defense is good, typically they're going to force some turnovers here and there. But how do you determine a good defense? It's a whole package. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Talking about other things besides just turnovers forced, I want to talk about touchdowns, because touchdowns are by far the most difficult thing to predict. I don't know if your quarterback, let's say, for example, the Bears play against the Packers in week 1, Thursday night game. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 4 touchdowns or throw 4 interceptions. I know there's a likelihood of neither of those things happening, but the fact of the matter is I can't predict if the Bears defense in week 1 is either going to get torched or end up getting a scoop and score touchdown. That kind of that is just so unpredictable because they're not so common in the NFL. But last year, the Bears led all teams with touchdowns. They had 6 total. The Rams had the second most touchdowns with 5 total, and then the Bengals had the third most touchdowns with 5 total. They tied for second, actually. So unpredictability-wise, yes, the top 2 defenses also had the most touchdowns in the NFL last year, but the Bengals somehow managed their way up there. Unpredictability. Also, talking about turnovers, the Bears forced the most turnovers last year with 36. The second most turnovers forced by the Browns, 31. They're nowhere in sight in terms of fantasy points, or they weren't even in the top 12 last year in terms of fantasy points by defenses. So things like that just to take into account. There's so many different variables that contribute to whether or not a defense is going to be top tier. The main thing that I found, the most common thing is obviously the points per game allowed or the turnovers, because turnovers they're so impossible to predict. That's why we're talking about this. Because a lot of us, yes, you want the Bears defense, but is it worth going after a team like that when perhaps this year maybe they have 0 defensive touchdowns? Sure, they can force the same amount of turnovers. They can force the 36 turnovers. But if they don't have those 6 touchdowns for those extra 30 fantasy points, guess what? They're probably not even the number 1 defense in the NFL this coming season in terms of fantasy points. So just to put that into perspective. Now, a couple other things that I wanted to mention, because many of you know I don't believe in drafting defenses. I believe in drafting handcuffs, and then eventually by week 1, by that Monday, I will pick up a defense and probably play matchups until the entirety of the year, for the rest of the year. And then maybe what I typically do is I like to look into the future and see future matchups that I like and try to lock down a defense that has, I can hold for at least a month or so. But I don't mind switching on a weekly basis. Now, the thing that we used to be able to do on a weekly basis is drop your defense and pick up who's playing the Browns. Pick up who's playing the Browns. Especially those years where the Browns were the worst team in the NFL consistently. They went 0-16 in 2017. That's when it was really easy to just be able to pick up a defense and throw them in. Last year, you were able to do that against the Bills for a couple weeks, against the Jets for a good amount of time. But this coming year, who is going to be that Browns team? Now, if you're a Browns fan, you shouldn't be offended. You know for a fact that the Browns haven't been good in a while, but they should be great this year. Who's going to be that team that we can start our defenses against on a weekly basis? Is it going to be, look, off the top of my head, I want to target weaker quarterbacks that are going to turn over the ball. Josh Rosen, so probably the Dolphins. Dwayne Haskins, probably the Redskins. Perhaps the Bengals if Andy Dalton becomes a mess. And then maybe even the Buccaneers. If in fact that train or the wheels fall off of that organization and Jameis Winston goes back to throwing interceptions, there's always a possibility of that being a defense you could start your offense that always being an offense that you could start your defense against on a weekly basis. Just giving ideas. Now, as of right now, going what the hell was that? That was a glitch in the system. You're in the Matrix. You're welcome. Okay, so as I was saying, going into the 2019 season, what are the defenses that I want to target? Like I mentioned earlier, the most consistent have been the Bears, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Ravens, and the Patriots. Now, in my honest opinion, I think the Patriots at their current value are the best defense to target, and let me tell you why. The Patriots, for the last 11, 12 years, have not lost the AFC East. Why? Because they get to play against the Miami Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bills twice a year each. That in itself, I guarantee you, the amount of fantasy points that Bill Belichick acquires for his team, just playing those teams on a yearly basis, is just going to be inherent value right there that you can't replace. Sure, you can go and pick up the Bears defense in the 8th round and hope to Jesus that Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, and Matthew Stafford don't torch them this year. You got to hope, though. But for a fact, I know when Bill Belichick gets to play against inexperienced quarterbacks like Josh Rosen, it's going to be Fitzpatrick for a little bit until he gets replaced, like Sam Darnold, like Josh Allen, it's going to be extremely easy for that defense to score points. And the Patriots have been so consistent defensively, even with losing pieces on a yearly basis, they still manage to be a great overall defense. Even losing defensive coordinators, they've still been extremely consistent. So in my eyes, the Patriots, they're a for sure defense that at their current value, they're not really coming off the board quickly. Like going around, I'm seeing people, obviously the Bears, the Jaguars, the Ravens, the Rams, those are great defenses. The Vikings, the Chargers, the Seahawks, the Broncos, the Cowboys, maybe the Browns, but the Patriots, I'm telling you, are extremely undervalued. And in terms of checking off all the boxes, in terms of points per game given up, last year they gave up the 7th fewest points around the National Football League. The year prior, they only give up the 5th fewest points around the National Football League in terms of points per game scored by opposing offenses. So they've been consistent for the last 2 years. On top of it, they cause turnovers. They'll score touchdowns. They have an easy schedule. I think it's just a perfect recipe of checking off all the boxes. Now, sure, you can go ahead. I don't mind going for the Jaguars this year, a team that completely fell apart last year. That's another defense that I like. Why? Their defense is not moving. They've just acquired more weapons for that defense. It's not like Jalen Ramsey disappeared or Calais Campbell's gone. No. They went and they brought in Josh Allen, who's going to dominate off the edge. They have all of their pieces defensively that they want. They still have Telvin Smith running around knocking people the F out. They have a consistent, solid base of a defense. And in their division where you get to play against Mariota twice, Brissett twice, obviously playing against Deshaun Watson is not easy, but, that's okay. You'll live with that. That could be a great pickup there also to consider. But anyway, those are my thoughts as of right now. I think, you could also have the argument for playing the Chargers defense against, Flacco twice, Derek Carr twice. That doesn't hurt either. But those are my thoughts. I think as of right now, in terms of going after defenses, try to not spend as much draft capital for them. You really shouldn't be taking a defense until the last 2 rounds, if at all. To be honest, again, I'll just wait on a defense and I'll pick them up for week 1. What defenses do I like for week 1? Well, we'll just have to wait and see on that Monday episode coming around next week on the 2nd of Monday, Labor Day. So we'll figure that out then. But that's pretty much it. Those are my thoughts as of right now. I just wanted to give you guys an update and see what's up there. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow I'll be bringing out a video of my bold predictions for the 2019 season, my Super Bowl predictions, and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out. Thank you everybody for watching today. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend to start off. If you have any questions, hit up the Patreon. The link is down in the description. Other than that, I will talk to you guys soon. And like this video, subscribe if you haven't. See you guys. Bye.